This is BankCents, the podcast that makes sense of all things banking. If there's something you don't understand about banking or finances, you're not alone. Our industry experts are bringing you informative and enjoyable conversations that break down bank jargon and dive into hot-button financial topics. And now, BOS, a community bank located across Illinois and Missouri, presents BankCents. Here's your host, Greg Marantz.
Hi, and welcome back to BankCents, the podcast that makes sense of all things banking. I'm your host, Greg Marantz, Senior Vice President here at the Bank of Springfield. And on today's episode, I'm excited to have back Tim Welch to talk about what to know for the 2024 tax season.
Yeah.
Tim, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're excited to have you on today. Obviously, tax season is a nerve-wracking time.
Sure
It can bring
is.
out a lot of stress. And so we're excited to bring our listeners some tips and tricks and some items to be aware of as they get into tax season.
Sure.
First off, I'd like to really get into just some of those tips and tricks that you might have for our listeners out there as they start to look at filing their taxes for the 2023.
Yeah,
calendar year.
I definitely think, planning is obviously really key. Making sure you have all your paperwork together, any 1099s, W-2s, any tax forms that you've received, make sure you've got them all, they're all accounted for before you even get started. Because that's the biggest thing is you get halfway through and you go, oh, I'm missing part of this, or your tax preparer, if you go into a professional, same thing. And then you're stuck waiting for another copy of what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's really important is to review your previous year's tax return if you filed previously and look at those items that you've received in the past and start a checklist on what you have and don't have. And
Absolutely.
And so then you can track and hopefully file your taxes early.
Yeah, earlier the better. You want to talk about tips and tricks. The earlier you do it, the earlier you're ready to get a refund if you're eligible for one. And the other thing too is, if you've had big life changes, you've had children or you've gotten married or you've changed jobs, any of those big life changes deserves a review because that's definitely changed your situation, probably your tax situation. So make sure you're kind of thinking about those things as well.
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of pressure as you look at filing your taxes. And unfortunately, when there's those pressures, especially when it comes to financial decisions, you're going to see a lot of people trying to take advantage of you during that time.
Yeah.
Can you expand upon some schemes and scams that might be out there right now?
Yeah, unfortunately, the IRS has people have a spot in their heart, I guess, where there's some fear there that's already built in.
Sure.
Because they want to make sure that they're paying their taxes. They want to make sure they're not staying in trouble. And a scammer will build on that fear, like you said. They'll see that pressure, they'll see that extra bit of anxiety, and they'll start pulling on that thread. And one of the ways they do that is via phone. They'll call you and say they're from the IRS, and they'll make it sound really great. And they'll tell you that you owe X number of dollars, let's say $3,000 to the IRS. Now, what I would say to that is, first of all, if you owe the IRS $3,000 or you owe them money, chances are you know about it before someone would just call you randomly and say that. Second of all, that's really not how the IRS works. They don't just call you one day and say, hey, you owe us $3,000. Let me get your credit card number. I think that we all understand that there is a process the IRS has to go through. They have guidelines, they have laws they have to follow. Typically, they're going to reach out via registered mail to know that you've received the document, and things are going to move forward that way. It's not just going to be a phone call on a Monday afternoon asking for your banking and tax information.
Yeah, we've talked a lot in our fraud episodes about the different avenues they could be reaching out to you. You mentioned emailing, they might text you, they might call. They could do any of those options. And so we really recommend for our listeners, when you get these calls and you might be a little unsure of it, stop.
Yes.
Stop for a second, take a minute, try to really understand what's going on and call a known source or somebody you can reach out to for some reliable advice, whether that be your bank or your accountant or a lawyer or something like that, to give you advice and try to slow that down. So they're going to want you to make a decision quick.
Yeah.
So try to slow down and really understand it before you commit to do anything over some of those avenues.
Yeah, I think slowing down is a great tip because I think what happens is when you don't slow down, you don't take that breath to think for a moment, emotion completely takes over. And if you're upset and you're worried that you've done something wrong and that you're in trouble, if you don't stop to think to yourself, wait, does this make sense? Then all logic is out the window and all reason is out the window. And then they've got you. And then you're going to pretty much do what they want. And typically that ends poorly for people.
Yeah, and it's very nerve-wracking. And as we always say to our listeners, we don't want to scare you, but we want you to be as informed as possible to make the best decision for your finances, because obviously that's very important. A couple of other scams I just wanted to point out real briefly that you can actually find on the IRS website, IRS.gov, is an abusive return preparer. So you might go to an accountant that's not filing your return in the correct way or the proper way, and might be trying to take advantage of you as well. So
absolutely, and I think it goes right along with that is the online tax preparation websites, and if it's somebody that you've heard of. And a lot of times, if you have a simple return, doing it yourself is perfectly fine. But when you start getting into things, other avenues, sometimes people have rental property, sometimes they have taxable investments and things like that. It starts to get complicated really fast. So having a reputable person, a tax preparer, maybe it's somebody and could be referred to by someone you trust, like a banker perhaps. But that is something that can definitely put your mind at ease as far as, am I doing the right thing here with this tax preparer?
Yeah, and that's one thing I really recommend is everyone should be filing their taxes. Everyone files taxes.
Yeah.
So reach out to a friend or somebody you really trust, and they're going to likely have an accountant, or maybe they're doing it themselves, but they can refer you on to somebody that you.
We all have to do it. You're right. So somebody's going to know someone good and dependable to report you to.
And the big item is, no matter what, even if you have somebody else prepare your return, you're the one signing on that return.
That's right.
So you need to make sure to review that information to make sure it's accurate.
Absolutely.
But all that information about schemes that are kind of currently ongoing are on the IRS website, which I kind of want to go on to next for our next topic, because it's a great resource for information. Just if you're filing a return or you're just looking for information in general. Can you kind of elaborate on some things you might find on the website?
I went on IRS.gov in preparation for today and just wanted to look around. There's some great checklists on there of things that you should do before you prepare your taxes, a list of items that you should have. There's a place where you can submit questions to be answered directly from the horse's mouth, as it were. I mean, the IRS is going to answer questions for you. You can file directly on their website, especially if you have a simple return. No better way than just doing it right with the source. You don't have to put a stamp on anything. It's all right there. And I was really surprised how much more robust their site has become and the resources that they have on it. And if you're going to IRS.gov, you're getting it from the right source.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, especially if you're unfamiliar with the process at all and you're not using an accountant, to go use that resource.
Mm-hmm.
We want to try to use the resources that we're given.
Yeah.
And I do think that's become, a great one. One thing I really want to preface is we're obviously not accountants or tax preparers, so we're not experts at all.
I'm not a tax expert or by any stretch. Yeah.
But it's important to use those resources and reach out to accountants who might know a little bit better than us when we need to. One item that everyone's really interested in when they're filing their taxes is checking their refund status. And that's one item you can do on the IRS website.
You can check the status of that refund, see where it's at. It's really handy. I mean, and if you're going to use a site to track your taxes, start with the source, and almost everything they have on there, if not everything on there, it's free. It's all free of charge.
Yeah, and when we talk about that refund, we start to talk about what we call the bank failsafe.
Yes, and this is something that's been a hot topic the last several years because it's really become something that the IRS is putting a lot of focus around to help prevent fraud, and banks as well. Is when we have an incoming refund, like you talked about, hey, I see my refund's coming in, you're getting excited. There's a couple of things we need to think about. And hopefully prior to you getting your refund, that we've thought of these things. So back to the tax preparation part of it, you want to make sure of a couple of things. Whoever is on your tax return needs to also be the owners on the account which the money's going to. So if you have a husband and wife, if that refund is being direct deposited into a checking account, both the husband and wife need to be on that account. If it's a parent and a kid, same thing, because the Social Security numbers have to match. If, for example, a couple files their taxes jointly and the money's going into an account where only one of them is an owner on the account, we have to return those funds, and then they're issued in a form of a check and sent to you. So who knows how long that will take. So if you want to prevent those delays, you want to prevent any issues getting that refund, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing we definitely suggest to all of our customers as you're filing taxes. Make sure you elect that option to have that refund electronically transferred to your bank account directly, because unfortunately there's also check fraud out there right now. So anything we can do to mitigate that risk with check fraud and direct deposit in your account is one of the best ways to do it and mitigate that risk. We definitely recommend you go out there, you fill out the correct routing number and checking account number. If you don't know that information, reach out to your banker and they can help provide that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a customer just the other day call to make sure that the account where they were filing their taxes, where that refund was going to go, they were double checking the routing number and account number, and I was able to go on and look. Yes, you're both owners on the account. That money should have no trouble flowing into that account. So just, make that extra phone call, do the double check. It's worth it.
Yeah. No, I think it's very important. And, we're lucky to have you on today because you've had, a lot of experience with talking with people about this topic.
Sure.
And it is very, nerve-wracking, pressure-filled topic that you want to make sure you're doing correctly. And the best way to do that is really to start early. And so I know we mentioned that a little bit earlier, but
Yep.
start early, start collecting that information early. Depending on your company, your W-2s could be, available in January.
Right.
You can't file in January quite yet. But you'll have to collect that other information, but you can start collecting, as soon as the calendar year turns over, and the earlier you prepare, the less likely you'll run into any issues.
Absolutely. And nowadays, sometimes you'll get that W-2 mailed to you. Some companies will still do that. Some of them just make it available electronically. So know what you're getting into, find out where those things are and gather them. Open up a folder for my taxes for this year. If you want to print it out and just put it in that folder, kind of the old fashioned way, just keep it all in one spot. When you're ready to file it, you've got your file, you're ready to go.
Yeah, and as we talked, use the IRS website, IRS.gov. You can go on there and they have tips and tricks and checklists and all this information out there that can help you, guide you through your taxes, as well as talking about the schemes and the fraud that's out there right now in the market.
Yeah, if you're unsure, they may even have a list of known, tax schemes and things on you can read through. Is this something that I should worry about? Have I gotten one of these calls? But when in doubt, go on that website, give your banker a call. We'll be glad to help you out.
Yeah, and then that leads us to the bank failsafe that we talked about.
Yeah,
get that account number and the routing number set up. And if you have any questions, reach out to your bank so we can help you out and guide you through that process where we can help.
Yeah, those extra steps of double check are almost always worth it. So.
Yeah. Well, Tim, thanks a lot for coming on today. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about the 2024 tax season for the 2023 calendar year.
I know. I can't believe it.
If any of our listeners out there would like any additional information, we have a great blog out there, Bank Source, that goes over these tips and tricks and have hyperlinks to the IRS website so you can go and check out that checklist. It really is a very helpful tool, especially at this time of year. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us here at the bank. We're more than happy to help out. Our website, bankwithbos.com, has our blog on it. So please go take a look. Tim, thanks again for coming on.
Welcome. Anytime. Of course.
As always, thanks for listening to BankCents, the podcast that makes sense of all things banking. Until next time.
Is there something about banking that doesn't make sense to you? Submit your questions to us on Instagram Messenger or by email, bankcents@bankwithbos.com. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, comment below. We're happy to give you our 2 cents on a wide range of topics. Thank you for listening on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a 5-star rating and review so we can continue to bring you more educational content. Thank you for listening, and we hope you join us on the next episode of BankCents.